If you watched my last video, you'd know that I'm a big advocate for modding for various reasons. And because I wanted to mod Rebirth the next time I played it, I managed to scrounge up some money together to buy the game and upgrade my GPU to a 6600 XT, meaning I was at the minimum requirements to play the game. Since then, I've been downloading mods that give new costumes, gameplay experiences, and quality of life improvements. But no gooning. As tempting as that sounds. As I was reliving moments in gameplay that made me fall in love with the game, it made me consider things that I feel can be added or expanded upon in the next Remake installment. So here are my top 10 things I feel are must-haves in Remake Part 3. Disclaimer, I'm not going to focus on stuff that is obviously going to be in it. The Remake team made it clear that nothing is being left out, but that we will experience our favorite moments in slightly different ways and times from the original. I'm more focused on user experience things that will make Remake Part 3 perhaps the best in the series. Once it has a trailer or two, then I will post a theory video on what we may see story-wise. But until then, onto the list, starting with number 10, full world and Highwind exploration. I know I just said I wasn't going to focus on stuff that was pretty obvious, but hear me out. Rebirth showed us that this remake world is massive. The developers will not only have to add areas that we've already explored, but also Wutai, Rocket Town, Medial, Fort Condor, the Redor Archipelago, unless it sunk below the ocean, and the Northern Continent, which should include an explorable Forgotten Capital, Icicle Inn, potentially Modeoheim introduced in Crisis Core, the Great Glacial, and the Northern Crater. Not to mention the return to Midgar, but I don't see us going there until the assault on the Sister Ray. This can make even top-of-the-line PC hardware have issues running it if we want it to be anything similar to what we can do in the original. When you make things more in scale with what would be realistic, the more resources you would have to put towards it. In the original, you could drop to land and then immediately fly up twice in less than 5 seconds. A game like Rebirth makes you see that that just isn't going to be possible considering the scale of the Highwind and the terrain of the world. Our best chance is that there will at least be the ability to fly down with a certain height in some areas and fly above the continents with designated zone landings similar to Piers with the Tiny Bronco. If they manage to somehow pull off what they did in the original without it being immersion breaking, I'll buy the entire trilogy twice because they deserve more money. But as great as that would be, my main want is an explorable Highwind where each person has their own room and maybe gets new paraphernalia as the game progresses and you get to understand them a little bit more. Maybe Choco Billy is our designated chocobo wrangler, allowing us to eventually bring region-specific chocobos to different areas for more exploration. And a central hub for shops, quest management, and fast travel similar to Final Fantasy XVI, along with something else, but we'll get to that a little later. There are a lot of possibilities that you can do with the Highwind, and I just hope that the remake team makes the most of it. Number 9, each zone has unique side objectives. The zones were a lot of fun to explore through in Rebirth. Each one's terrain felt different from the last one, with new fiends, side, and main quests, and ways to traverse the area. But regardless of which zone you went to, you still had combat encounters with sometimes the same objectives, life stream springs, summon altars, and towers to open up the map fog to reveal some of the same objectives. What the hell is that doing there? While the proto-relic quests were the perfect blend of familiar and unique as each quest required new mini-games or side stories, I feel like that level of uniqueness should be the same across all areas. While some of the objectives I mentioned have different fiends guarding the towers, or you can only reach it with a specific thing, I'm still just pressing triangle, or holding triangle, or pressing the same face buttons to a certain rhythm. I've paid my dues in Part 2. Don't make me do it again in Part 3. Number 8, connection with Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis.
What you say is heresy.
I don't mean that Part 3 should be grindy and cost hours and money to progress through. I'm talking about costumes and weapons. Ever Crisis has some of the best outfits that Final Fantasy has ever produced. While some of the stuff obviously makes no sense in regards to the story of FF7, I don't care. On second playthroughs, I like playing a game with a cool or maybe ridiculous costume because it makes it more fun. I have already enjoyed the game that the devs made for me. Now I want to play this game however I want. Different costumes, weapons, and builds give the player a unique experience which adds replay value, which in turn adds value to the game overall. If you want people to play Ever Crisis, then reward the ones who invested in the game. By connecting Ever Crisis to Remake Part 3, you could allow players to port costumes and weapons that they already paid or grinded for between the two games. Square gets more engagement and money, and we get the ability to have a unique gameplay experience when playing the mainline title. And if you bundle character, weapons, and outfits for a fair price, the money will come. Speaking of weapons and outfits. Number 7, transmogging for weapons and outfits. This one is simple. I like the stats of one weapon, but I like how another one looks.
So, you finally arrived. What the hell are you wearing?
It's my ass-kicking outfit, bitch!
With transmog, we don't have to choose between looks and efficiency. This should be mandatory in all RPGs going forward, and I'm surprised that it isn't already, because player choice matters in an interactive medium. Enough said. Number 6.5, subscribe. Do it, coward. Bet you won't. Want to prove me wrong, that's fine, but you gotta press the button. Number 6, aerial and environmental combat. Now, we got a decent bit of this in Rebirth. It was good.
But it can be better.
I want the ability to do some Advent Children shit. I want to be able to do some Dissidia shit. It makes sense for them not being able to do this often at the beginning of their journey, but now everyone is a lot stronger. But all the cool stuff is saved for cutscenes. I say nay! We should be able to do this stuff in gameplay. Minus Barrett, everyone on the team is very mobile. And even then, I can see Barrett using some firepower propulsion to get to higher areas. I have no doubt that Sid and Vincent will be playable characters. Vincent is one of the most mobile characters in the party, especially in his Galleon form. Sid has a Dragoon fighting style. Limiting these characters and others to being grounded with minimal aerial movement would be a disservice. Having us jump off the walls, leap over high terrain, or even the enemies in a seamless way could take the amazing combat established in Rebirth to new heights. Literally. Number 5, Chadley talking less. This is non-negotiable. If he talks more in part 3 than he did in Rebirth, then the whole game gets dropped down a whole number on the review scale. I don't mind his yapping too much on my first playthrough. He really overstays his welcome on subsequent playthroughs. He is in charge of information, materia development, and the combat simulator. A lot of things that you'll be going back and forth on, and he always has something to say every time you talk to him. I understand the devs need the VAs to get their money's worth, but can we please at least get a toggleable switch in the options menu? Call it shut up you damn nerd. Number 4, menu access from the combat simulator. This is a minor change that is a major improvement that needs to happen. The combat simulator is where you're going to get most of your challenge in Rebirth, if we aren't including hard mode. Materia, equipment, and team synergy make a big difference on how easy or hard you want to make things on yourself. There is nothing more frustrating in this game than beginning a combat sim, getting your ass kicked, wanting to switch up your build, having to exit the simulator, listen to Chadley offer words of encouragement, go to the menu, switch things up, talk to Chadley again, boot up the simulator, and try the challenge all over again. Just let me go to the equipment menu from the simulator menu. I'm sick and tired of talking with Chadley! Number 3, more playable characters. While Vincent and Sid are pretty obvious party members to join in the next installment, Zack and Sephiroth had such great gameplay that it would be a waste to make them both Rebirth exclusive. Instead, they should go further with it, offering team attacks and synergy moves among all party members, with the concept of separate worlds colliding. The remake team can possibly add even more playable characters that wouldn't even be considered in the original installment. Maybe Team Glenn, Dyne, Master Zungun, hell, maybe even Angeal in Genesis. With Aerith being dead, not dead, I have this theory that while Cloud and the gang are going through the main story in proper course events, Aerith will be gathering strong fighters from the separate worlds to help save the planet against Sephiroth. I'm still hammering this theory out, but I need a trailer or something of Remake Part 3 to put any weight onto it. But there is no denying that Remake and Intergrade gave us 5 characters to play as, and Rebirth added an additional 4. Sephiroth was a character we all hoped to play as considering the Nibelheim flashback, but Zack was a complete surprise. I've always loved parallels between characters, rivals, and characters that mirror other characters. With Aerith gone and worlds colliding, we could get very cathartic moments with Aerith gathering important and strong people to fight alongside our heroes, Cloud and Zack, Tifa and Zungun, Barrett and Dyne, Nanaki and Seto. It's far-fetched, but having only 2 new playable characters with Zack and Sephiroth being up in the air as playable, it just sounds criminal. But I also acknowledge I'm a little greedy. Number 2, day 1 release on all platforms. As Square Enix has announced that exclusivity has hurt their sales numbers lately. With Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth being PS5 exclusive, they missed out on great potential sales on initial release. Rebirth in particular was honestly set up to perform below margins. It was a sequel that was heavily reliant on story, meaning anyone who didn't play the original or didn't like the direction Remake was going in the story weren't going to stick around for the sequel. Top that off with Rebirth being PS5 only meant that only half of the Sony player base would be able to buy it, and no shit, it only did half as good as Remake. While Square is now remedying this with their PC ports coming out almost 1 year after release, the ports have been ass to say the least. However, if they make it multi-platform from the start, there is a better potential of them prioritizing optimization because it will be built from the ground up with console and PC limitations in mind from the get-go. I understand that this is a very naive way of looking at it. The game has just finalized its story, but probably still needs to be written in regards to its dialogue. Development has been ongoing, but how efficiently is still not 100% certain. They have so many new things, mechanics, and places to implement that making things run on everything is a tall request. Square has never attempted a game of this scale before, and I believe that they want to release the game the year of Final Fantasy VII's 30th anniversary, being in 2027. That gives them less than 2 years to push this game out, which is a huge ask. Having the game come out then also means that new consoles and PC hardware will already be out. Switch 2, PS6, new GPUs and CPUs, and maybe another Xbox console. I don't know what's going on in that train graveyard. But if they want big sale numbers, they're gonna have to find a way to make it work on all mediums when hype is at its highest. If it's multi-platform from day one, that is revenue from so many different fronts, and gamers aren't divided on what they get to enjoy the game on. Everyone wins, but only if they release it when it's finished. And my number one must-have is more modes and challenge customization. When I first bought Rebirth on PC, I was so happy that I was going to be able to put myself further in debt so I can enjoy a no limitations experience. Modding, optimization, tinkering, lighting fixing, etc. And I was met with more hours being spent attempting to at least not have immersion breaking pixelation and checkerboard rendering than actually playing the damn game. Spoiler warning, I failed. But I did download Cheat Engine to allow me to play as Sephiroth and Zack in the open world. While there are some glitches and issues, full party customization made me realize that this needs to be a staple feature after beating the story. Playing as Zack and free roaming the Gongaga region was something I never thought I would get to do. Fighting fiends in the area with just my Buster Sword to keep me company was something I couldn't wait to get back to after a long day. Full team customization to have Tifa, Sephiroth, and Zack in Nibelheim, or a team that doesn't have to have Cloud in the party outside of the combat simulator, is the most fun I've had with this game. Remake and Rebirth have some amazing and fun bosses, but I don't want to trek through a bunch of chapters and make separate save files before the start of each encounter if I want to fight them again. And with so many characters to play as, imagine the replay value you can give players to do challenge runs like, can you beat every boss with just Vincent? Also, boss rush? We established that the PC ports had been shit, but the least you could have done is add a boss rush to Rebirth! In part 3, I imagine that all of the weapon bosses are going to be story-based fights as opposed to some being optional like in the original. In OG, Disc 2 and 3 are where we get some of the best boss fights and high-stake missions. Being able to play specific quests and bosses is a feature that will add hours of enjoyment long after credits roll. If they do what they did with FF16 and have Chadley allow you to replay quests, missions, bosses, and minigames that have story elements, pulling me away from the game will almost be impossible. If Square implements these features and sticks the landing on the ending of this trilogy, this has the potential to be the best game that Square Enix has ever made. Well, that's my top 10 list. Do you agree with it? If not, what features and story elements would you want to see? Post them in the comments below because I'd really love to see what you expect from the final installment in this series. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.